In this video, I want to share with you the thing that keeps so many people stuck. And it's wild because so many people are here, yet you never want to be here in life. You never want to be in this spot. But before I tell you what it is, let me talk a little bit about what the characteristics of this thing are. Because the characteristics really define the system. And the characteristics of your life are going to give you pretty big indicators of what's going on. So as I start here today, let me just write a few things out because I like to visualize things, and hopefully you guys do as well. So just let me know one way or the other. But sort of if you start looking at your life, maybe at the bottom here, maybe the lowest state you might be in is really apathy. And what is apathy? You don't care about things. You're listless, right? You're just kind of like, hey, doesn't matter where I go to eat. Doesn't matter what I do. I'm just here. You're apathetic. And that's like one of the worst places to be in life because you just can't get any emotional drive for anything. And emotion is what drives everything. Everything that you do is actually based off of emotion. And it's based off of you trying to feel some sort of emotion. If you go down to the very bottom of everything, we could say it's pain or pleasure, the carrot or the stick. And these are just different ways of describing things. But if you get up and you're like, oh, I want to go get a glass of water, what are you trying to do? Well, you feel thirsty. It's an emotional thing that you feel, right? And so we're all trying to feel certain ways in life. And that's our primary motivator, no matter what we do, whether we want a new car or we want a new house or we want to date somebody new or whatever it may be. We're all trying to feel a certain way. And those are typically what I call your values. You value certain states. You value feeling certain ways. And this gets mixed up with language because we have our top values, etc. But the point that I'm getting at with some of this is one of the worst places to be is apathetic. However, it's not actually the most dangerous place to be because if you are apathetic, chances are then you can get something. At some point, you'll get a jolt and you'll snap out of that. And then you see a lot of people who have a little apathetic period, but then they turn into major go-getters, etc. Now, a step up from there that can be really dangerous. And whoops, I just turn my iPad off here. A step up from there that can be really dangerous is up here, and that is complacency. Why is complacency so dangerous? Well, I'll tell you. First of all, what are some of the characteristics of complacency? You have a lack of drive. You have a lack of drive, a lack of motivation, a lack of zest for life. When you're complacent, life can be great. And then you're complacent. And again, that's where you don't want to be. So let's look at the characteristics. Life can be, quote, good, right? Life may be good, but you need constant growth in life. You need contribution. If you're not progressing, then, you're shrinking. And a lot of people find themselves feeling unfulfilled. They feel like they're not living up to their potential. And what that really is describing is they have a lack of growth. So they can have the cars, you may have the business, you may have the wife, the kids, the house, you may be buried up under debt with all of those things, but you might be complacent. And complacent is where I think is probably one of the most dangerous places that you can be as an individual. And the reason for that is you can have these characteristics where life seems like it's really good, right? Life seems like you're great, but because you don't have that growth, because you're not pushing yourself, because especially as men, if you're not growing, you've got a big problem in your life. And so when you start looking at the characteristics of complacency and apathy, what this really brings into, and this makes up a decent portion of a lot of guys that I talk to out there, and I call this no man's land. Why do I say it's no man's land? Because you can't figure out a direction. You perceive so many options that you're not doing anything. Or you're afraid to say yes to one thing, or you're afraid to say no to a lot of things. And this is really important because in this area of complacency, stuff can be pretty good. But you weren't put here to have a simply good life, were you? You weren't put here to have an average or mediocre life. And you can tell yourself and you can convince yourself all day long of how great your life is. But we both know it can be better, right? For so many of us out there, we can grow more. We can do more. We have a bigger potential. And that is where complacency is. So another characteristic, before I get lost here, of complacency is it's where growth goes to die. It's where growth goes to die. Now, if you're not growing, then you're starting to feel unfulfilled. And that creeps up in your life. And so you start to feel empty and you start to feel like you're stagnating. And this is the problem that so many guys run into. They've done some really big things, perhaps. Maybe you've had a pretty good amount of success in your life, and now you've lost your motivation. You've lost your drive because you're complacent and you're like, yeah, well, I've got these things and life is good and why should I push myself? Yet at the same time, you don't feel alive. At the same time, you know you're not living up to your potential. And so what are you really having? You're in no man's land. You're not willing to commit to anything. And because of that lack of commitment, you feel unfulfilled. It's because of that lack of commitment that you're not really playing to your potential. So here's what we want to get to. We want to go up the scale here. And what we really want to have are different characteristics in our life. We want to have desire. We want to have drive. We want to have motivation, right? These are the things that we want to have. But we don't want to have these things where they're erratic. And that is where another large group of men live. They've got a ton of drive. They've got a ton of motivation. They've got a ton of these characteristics, and yet they're not focused. And when you're not focused, you're saying yes to everything. I have a friend, and he's like this serial guy. He tries to do 20 things at once. And I used to be that way. I still am that way sometimes. I've gotten a lot better about it because I realize when I say yes to one thing, I'm saying no to an infinite number of other things. If I say yes to going out to eat with somebody that night, I can't go do something else that night. I'm going to have that one experience. And so that yes also becomes a limitation and it becomes a responsibility. And this is what I see tons of guys run into because they're unwilling to make the absolute commitments to get results in life. And this, where you get results, is you take these, and you have focus. Now you're out of no man's land. Now you're on the path to living powerfully. Now you need a little bit more than focus. You need a plan, and you need a way of measuring whether you're getting results or not. And for so many guys out there, it matters more about which boat you're in more than anything. Because if you're in a boat that you're not going to get any results in, but you want to become a multimillionaire, there's a lot of people that can become multimillionaires out of a ton of businesses. So that's probably actually not a good example. But let's say you want to become worth over $100 million. You need a really good boat. You have to be in an enterprise that allows you to scale up to that and to really do big things. So if you think, hey, I'm going to be really focused and I've got a lot of desire and I've got a lot of drive and, but you're not going into something that has the capacity for you to get results, that can be another aspect that holds people back. So anyways, the point of this video here that I wanted to cover is really the most dangerous place that you can be in is no man's land. And so if you have these characteristics, if you're feeling apathetic, if you're feeling like you could be more, if you're feeling like life has more to offer, certainly it has more to offer, and certainly you have more to offer. Certainly you can be better. Certainly you have more potential. Well, I would encourage you to take the first step, which is make a decision. Make a decision to actually pursue that potential. Make a decision to live up to who you could be. And then get resourceful. Get resourceful however you need to get resourceful. Maybe you need to get a coach. Maybe you need to say, hey, I'm going to read a book a week for the next year. And maybe that's your source. Maybe you say, I need to go find a course. Whatever it may be, you have to start taking that first step and get focused. Be willing to cut out all the other distractions. You have to be willing to cut out the things that don't bring you into the life that you know you could be living. And you know that, I heard something said the other day by someone, and I think it's a great thing. And I like to ask guys this a lot because you have a lot of guys and they're like, man, I want to be a multimillionaire, or I want to be a successful businessman, or I want to, be a top creator. And I say, okay, well, what kind of guy would you have to be in order to do that? What time would you have to get up? How would you dress? What are the characteristics that you would have? Like, what are the characteristics that you can develop? These are skill sets. Would you need to be more of a leader? Would you need to have better sales skills? Would you need to have better rapport building skills? What are those characteristics? Then just go do that. Start living those characteristics of the type of man that it would take to live inside a $10 million house. Like, become that guy. That's who you have to become in order to get that goal. And if you're in no man's land, you're never going to get there. So you have to get out of no man's land and you have to take a step up, but not just a step up of getting driven, of getting motivated, and having desire for something more. You have to get focused and you have to have commitment. You have to have standards, and you have to consistently show up day after day in a powerful state and be able to measure that you're getting results towards your target. Guys, I hope this helps. Let me know. I'm going to do more of these trainings. I'm starting off doing these trainings, and I'm going to do a lot more. So be great.